Hey folks, Mike Shea from slyflourish.com and twitter.com/slyflourish here with another episode of Lazy D&D Prep. As we have in previous shows, every Sunday at roughly 10 a.m., we will be talking about Tomb of Annihilation, preparing for my Tomb of Annihilation game using the steps of the Lazy Dungeon Master. All of these shows are broadcast live on Twitch and then recorded for posterity on YouTube, so you can see previous ones. If you look down below on the Twitch channel, you can see useful links and things like that. Hey, my friend Enrique is online. Enrique and I yesterday had a show where we talked about dealing with how to keep player agency when facing insurmountable foes. I'll be talking a little bit about that today, and I'm glad to see that Enrique is in the chat. And Enrique and I also had a couple of topics that we talked about with Tomb of Annihilation that I plan to talk about as well. Tilda de Wilda is here. Hello, my friend. Thank you for coming back. Always a pleasure to see you. I have to pop out the chat here so I'm not driving myself crazy. So I have some exciting news. Just before I launched the channel, I had mailed myself some stuff. And in my inbox was nothing less than the hopefully final version of the PDF of Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. And you fine folks on Twitch today will be able to see it along with me for the first time. We have had about, I think, 3 major revisions of the layout since Mark Radel started putting it together. And the first run, this is when you know you have a fantastic editor. I sat down with the first run and I looked at it really carefully, read through the whole thing top to bottom, and I said, yeah, I've got about three things that need to be changed. And I wrote them down and then sent them to Scott Gray, the editor, and he said, yeah, I've got 90. And so I was like, well, I'm glad you're on board. So we sent those back to Mark. Mark made those changes. Then we looked at it again all the way through, and we had about 3 changes. And then those went through, and now we have the final version with a linked table of contents and links in the references as well. So we'll do a quick zip through that. So a couple of things that I wanted to talk about today. I've been putting little notes up on the left side there. For those of you who wonder who did the layout, the layout was done by Eric Vulgaris. Enrique, if you plan to continue to do shows and you want somebody to build you a nice Twitch template, he is fantastic. Really, really good and great feedback, like really rapid. When I was working with him, he was giving me rapid feedbacks, like, really, really quickly. The editor that I use to do all my game notes and everything on the left is called Sublime. You can Google it. There's a preview for Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. Here is the link if you want to browse through the preview itself. I just stuck it in the Twitch chat, and it'll also be linked on YouTube down below. The handouts for Tomb of Annihilation, you can Google these as well. I put a little link in here if you're interested. But the 3 things that I wanted to talk about, and I guess we could talk about these up front, are topics that came up when Enrique and I were talking about Tomb of Annihilation during the show we did yesterday. By the way, if my video or audio is weird at all, please give me a yell. I think everything should be okay. I'm looking at my meters and everything looks fine. But you never know. Sometimes things get goofy. So we were talking about Tomb of Annihilation, and the 2 groups that I'm running through are in the process of getting the cubes from the shrines. I've got some interesting things to show you guys with the shrines. I put together some Dwarven Forge shrines for today's game. And Enrique and I were talking about some of the problems that the adventure has, and I've been lucky that I kind of knew about these problems before I started, and from the get-go was able to wire these in. So I thought we'd talk about these 3. And there's 3 kind of big ones, and if you guys in chat have more that you know of, please mention them. And Enrique, I know you're in chat if you have other ones as well, but I'm thinking of the 3 that we talked about yesterday. The first one is that there's a lot of potential NPCs that can jump into this game, including some really high-level NPCs. Let me move my camera a little bit. There we go. So there's a lot of NPCs. There's a lot of guides, and I have an article on Sly Flourish. Let's see if I can find it. Let's see, Google. Oh no! Don't look at my. Let's see. Site, Sly, Tomb of Annihilation. So session 0. I thought I had it here. Running Port Nyanzaru. I think it's in my Running Port Nyanzaru one where I talk about... yeah, so I've got a few good things in here. Where I talk about the troublesome guides. So here's a link to that article. Again, I'll paste it in the chat and I'll stick it down in here. So I have a couple. I have that one, and then I have another one. Let's see. I've got a lot of good stuff. Man, I write some good articles. And humble, too. Yeah, I guess it looks like I got 4 articles about Tomb. I kind of forget. I write these over such a long period of time. I forget that I've even written them. Man, a lot. Serax prepared spells. I'm not really going to get into that one. We'll figure that one out later. But so one of the main things is that the NPCs can be a problem because they can take away character. They sort of take the spotlight off the character. And Enrique talked about one in particular. This is this episode will be full of Tomb of Annihilation spoilers, by the way, and prepare for one now. One of the NPCs is Artis Cimber, who's a very powerful paladin. Or no, I don't know what he is, but I think his paladin friend, Linkbait. Is his name Linkbait? I don't think his name is Linkbait, but we'll call him Linkbait. Has a Holy Avenger sword. So when you got these guys in your group, they are way more powerful than the characters are. And Enrique talked about how they just completely dominate fights, and they'll really take a lot of the spotlight away from the characters. I noticed that even the guides can do that a little bit. So... I don't really like having NPCs in groups anyway. I always like to have my NPCs. Dragonbait is his name. I like Linkbait. Don't you like Linkbait? Clickbait? I never actually had them come in. And I think if I had them come in, they would have been there just you meet them and then they go away, not they join the group. I know the book says join the group, but that it can be really troublesome. So I've heard that from multiple people that when you have these NPCs that are like major players inside of a group, that can take a lot of the agency away from the characters. It takes a lot of spotlight away from the characters. So be careful, but the NPCs is probably number one. Manage them, have them come in and out, maybe make sure that they are not combatants, somehow push them to the background to keep the spotlight on the characters. I never really like a lot of the hardback adventures have heavy NPCs that join the group. Out of the Abyss has a lot of NPCs that can join the group. And what else? Prince's doesn't so much. I guess that's the main one. That one has a lot of NPCs in it. And I just always find it like I don't need any more shit to manage. You know, I don't need more characters. Like I want to focus on the main characters and let the NPCs come in and come out. I don't really want to put too much effort on them. So so that's something that I've heard recommended and that I recommend is, you know, keep the NPCs in Tomb of Annihilation in the background and make sure that you have a good way for them to go in and out and not mess with the game too much. And it sounds like Enrique had that same issue. He had Artis Cimber in the group and he couldn't wait to get rid of him. And then it still became a problem because they're like, maybe we should jump that guy and take his ring. The other one, and it's another big problem. I wrote an article about this one. It's there in the notes. Which is that the death curse is really urgent. And because it's so urgent, the players are going to feel like they really have to drive fast to stop that. And that why would they do any of this side stuff if they've got this main problem to go after? So if you know that early on, you cannot describe how urgent the death curse is. You don't have to say that people are falling apart every day. And instead it's like, yeah, people that have been resurrected have a disease and it looks like it's escalating, but you don't have to say how much. And you can actually use that as a dial to dial the urgency forward and back, depending on the drive of the characters. If you feel like things are taking like people are just kind of meandering about and they're not really paying attention, then you might turn that dial a little bit and start to, you know, show that the death curse is escalating, show that it's getting worse and that the characters really need to do something about it. So if you handle it with a loose grip, if you don't describe it if you don't say like every, you know, don't like I'm very glad that I did not tell the players, hey, anyone who is resurrected is losing a hit point a day. You know, I'm glad I didn't bring that up because then they're really they know they've got a ticking clock and they know like, well, we have basically, 100 days and then everyone's dead that ever was resurrected, or what, pretty close to it. So not putting that in play and instead just making it a background effect and keeping it loose made a big difference. I ended up having no problem at all with the death curse when I did that. So I think that's something to look into if you're running it. The third, and this is something Newbie DM mentioned, Enrique mentioned, which is that he didn't really feel like, and Enrique, feel free to chime up in the chat, but you didn't really feel like the Yuan-ti played much of a role in the adventure, and that they're sort of just stuck in that final area, and now you got to deal with them, but you don't really know why. And I did not have that problem, mostly because I really like the Yuan-ti as a villain. I think they're a cool villain. I hadn't really run them in other adventures, so it's kind of fun to have some focus on them. And I integrated them right away. So like the party was facing Yuan-ti assassins and Yuan-ti spies in their first couple of sessions in Port Nyanzaru. Like the fact that the Yuan-ti were sort of everywhere and that they have spies all over continually came up as they went through. And it ended up meaning that the entire subplot of the release of the Night Serpent became another subplot. It's like the Yuan-ti aren't trying to destroy. Well, so Ras Nisi is trying to destroy the Soulmonger, but the Yuan-ti overall, their goal is to release the Night Serpent. And having that as another subplot really kind of made the, for me, it enriched the tapestry of the adventure. It meant that there's another thing going on as well. And I already have two characters who are deeply tied into the release of the Night Serpent or not releasing the Night Serpent. Lots of visions, and they have daggers that are cursing them. One of my characters has a cursed dagger. Another one is a worshiper, or he's a warlock, and his patron is the Ashodo, who is like a guardian of the door to the Night Serpent. I'm making that up. That's not exactly how it is in the lore, but works for my purposes. So it ended up that when they faced the Yuan-ti, it wasn't tacked on. It's something that they had been hearing about and dealing with. The Red Wizards, not so much. I hadn't incorporated them as much. They knew that they were out there. They certainly heard about the Red Wizards when they got to Omu, and they are going to have a big part to play while dealing with Omu, but I didn't sort of integrate them early, and maybe that would have been better. It'd have been cooler if like they found out that another faction inside Port Nyanzaru are the Red Wizards, and they're hiring guides and mercenaries themselves to try to get to the tomb, because they also want to figure out how to stop it. That would have been something it means that you could really have some interesting factions in Tomb that are different than otherwise. You can have the Flaming Fist mercenaries, you can have the Yuan-ti, you can have the Red Wizards. You don't have to stick with like the normal 5 factions. You can have some kind of new ones. So those are some of the. I'll probably write up on once I finish with this, I'm going to write up an article. I've also been asking, because I haven't yet started running the Tomb of the Nine Gods itself. I've been asking folks on Twitter about the people that have finished it or are deep into it, what tips they have for the Tomb of the Nine Gods, and I've gotten some good feedback about like specific rooms. Let's see if I can pull it up here. Let's see. I don't want to do that. I'll go back to that and bring up a new window. Bring up the window you guys can't see, in case I load something you don't want to know about. Passwords and whatnot. So let's see. Tweets and replies. Notifications, mentions. So there were some rooms that, so Merric Blackman, he has been running it, and I asked him like what rooms he would recommend, and he said that a few of the puzzles and traps here, I'm going to link this to. And Newbie DM says the tomb is non-linear. I assume that's a good thing to keep in mind. He said that some of the traps and puzzles are kind of complicated, and if you don't describe them right, it could really screw the characters over, and they could die, and they'll feel like they got screwed. He said that there's a wine room and the Taraka room. I remember reading about the wine room, and I think I remembered about the Taraka room as well. And yeah, so he said number 20, the wine room, on level 2. Level 4, number 47, the elements, and number 48, Taraka. Trying to explain them clearly and judge the effect of players was challenging. 47 and 48 together. If the players don't understand what you describe, they could be deadly. He said the ring is also another one where the DM needs to convey information to the players clearly so that things don't cause problems later. So that you don't want people to feel screwed because you describe them differently. So that's probably worth. It's worth kind of digging into that. The other thing I heard is to really reinforce the Tomb Guardians and the dwarves that are, building the Tomb Guardians. Newbie DM says that there's the skeletons. There's the skeletons that have the big keys on their head. Their heads are the keys. Let's see if I think there's artwork for them. Oh, not in this chapter. Let's go to Tomb of the Nine Gods. So good. These guys. There's these like skeletons that have these big keys on their head, and Newbie DM says make them interesting. Newbie DM says what we spoke about yesterday. I forget what we spoke about yesterday in regards to these guys, but make them full descriptions. So I get that like one alternative might be to make them powerful enemies, but I kind of like that maybe they're running around and they're sort of, the party has to sort of chase them down throughout the tomb. And it's the tomb that's killing the characters, not so much these skeletons. Like once you get them, you just beat them and grab them, but you have to go find them. And I think there might be, I don't know. And you guys, newbie Enrique, you actually ran this, and other people have run it. So if you think that making them powerful skeletons that they have to fight could be one thing, especially if they're not fighting a lot of things. So I think I'll probably sort of improvise that. I don't know how I'm going to run those guys yet. And it'll depend on like, if they've already had a bunch of fights, I'm not going to throw another fight at them to have a hard skeleton. But if they've also are in the mood, if I feel like the mood is in for a hard fight, then maybe I'll beef them up into, Tomb Guardians or something, or mummy, use a mummy stat block. And that gets into, there's a really good book by, Robin Laws called Hamlet's Hit Points, which talks about the importance of story beats when we're running role-playing games. And one of the things about story beats is we kind of don't know what the beat is going to be until we're running the game. And the beats, essentially, at the surface level of that book, you want to have high beats and low beats that oscillate so that players feel like good things are happening and bad things are happening, and good things are happening and bad things are happening. You want to move that back and forth. That's where the drama comes from. If everything is good, then people get bored and they don't feel like there's anything as a challenge. And if everything is bad, they feel hopeless or just depressed. So you want to kind of have this going back and forth. So it might be like if they have a really hard time with a room and they're getting the shit kicked out of them, you then want to make the skeleton an easy thing for them to get, right? They just go, they punch it, it's destroyed, they grab the head of it and they walk off. And then in other cases, it's like the trap was really easy and the skeleton looks real weak, and then they turn around and it grows 4 extra arms and starts dicing them up with scimitars. So I think that we can sort of improvise. I feel like I'm probably going to improvise how difficult those skeletons are depending on what story beat I want to convey during the adventure itself. So we'll see how that goes. And I might change my mind. And again, it's always useful to hear people that have actually run it and hear what problems they had. So Enrique, I'm curious what you think about that idea. But I'm not yet in the tomb. I am still in Omu. And we, let's see, Lands of Child Dwellers, Omu. So here we are in Omu. So let's talk a little bit about today's game. In last week's game, the shrines are what I'm kind of spending some time with now. And in last week's game, the characters defeated the Unk's shrine and got the item from there. They also did meet and did uncover the guide, who turned out to be a what was his name? So Ishmael said they found out that he works for the Red Wizards, and he said, "Hey, let me just go talk to my people, and we'll see if we can find a time for us to get together and talk about our issues. And we don't have to. There's enough violence going on in the city. Let's not get violent here." So that means the door is open for negotiations with the Red Wizards rather than a big ass fight. So that I think can work. They then defeated the Unk's shrine, and then they went to the front of Shagambi's shrine and fought one of the two Jakulis that were there. The other one had been killed by, I think, red wizards at the time. And I think I hinted that the Shagambi's shrine had already been raided, but I think I'm going to take that back because I wasn't thinking real clearly. And I ended up building a nice little Dwarven Forge setup for it, which I think you can now see. So I built this morning using my new Dwarven Forge stuff. That's one picture of it. There's a high view picture of it. And I made like a 2-layer. This is the one where you fight gladiators. And I think fighting 4 gladiators sounds boring as shit. So I'm going to have them fight like one big ass gladiator. Like there's a statue here. Its hands are open looking for a weapon. Then they have to go down here. They get locked in. They call one of the gladiators, which comes out of the cells here. And then they battle this thing. And I was thinking maybe a stone golem or something like that would be a really tough fight that they'd have to deal with and get the puzzle cube for it, like a real beating. So I'm playing with that idea, and we'll see. It might be like a legendary. Like I could make it a champion. I could use the champion stat block and have that. That would be really tough. Or I could beef it up and just have it be like a stone golem. That might be fun as well. I don't know. I think stone golems are pretty. Stone golems, I think, are pretty. Let's take a look at stone golems. Pretty hard. But let's see. So challenge 10. So it's way higher than the character's challenge rating. The characters are level 7. So it's actually probably about a right fight for a really challenging fight. 2 hits, plus 10, 19 damage. That's good. It's got that slow. Yeah, so it doesn't have like a crazy... It does have magic resistance. This might be pretty good. I might just do that. Like that's a real straightforward fight. I might give it like 1 slam attack on its turn and then maybe some legendary slam attacks or 1 extra slam attack. I don't know how I'm going to pull that off. But it doesn't look like it's impossible to beat. I think 178 hit points is a lot, but that's easier. The alternative is I could use something like a champion. Which isn't really that much different, right? It's pretty close. So I think that we'll just go with the stone. The stone golem makes more sense. So there's the stone golem. There's the arena. I assume you guys can see all that. Is that all showing? Yeah, you guys can see that. So that's kind of a neat. So this is all, not to talk about Dwarven Forge, but the new Dwarven Forge stuff from the Kickstarter last year came in. And I love these terrain trays. These are 12-inch metal plates with a cloth, sort of a cloth top that looks like stone. And they're magnetic. You can the pieces around here are magnetic. So it holds the whole room together. So this is a 2-level room with stairs that go up and then a deeper pit below. Oh, coffee. Thank you, my love. I got coffee. And that works really well. There's stairs that go down here. There's a little passage underneath here. That kind of worked well. And what I love about these 12-inch trays is you can build they're perfect for these shrines. You build a shrine on it, and then I can take this and I can stick it into a tupper. I have like these. They call them really useful boxes, and there's one that's like perfect size to hold 2 of these stacked on top of one another. And you could just lift the tray up, and the whole room stays together. You don't have to do it. So. Newbie DM says, yesterday we spoke about giving players full context about the challenges, not about the skeleton specifically. Oh yeah, about letting them know, especially what, when things are going to get lethal or not. Anyway, so they're dealing with the shrines, and I think that I'm going to start the game off with this shrine. So when we talk about the strong start, normally it would be like what event takes place. So scenes would be is it the Draculi shrine? Shagambi. That's probably the first scene. But what event could be taking place? So I ran for the last group. I ran the sacrifice of the when the Vegapygmies are going off to sacrifice the what are they called? The grung. I don't know if I want to run that right again again. So if you guys in chat, what would be an interesting event that's taking place in Omu while all of this is going on? It could be that the Tomb of the Night Serpent blows up. What's it called? So this might be fun because it could introduce Valindra. How about Valindra's Shadow Mantle blows up the Fane of the Night Serpent with a meteor swarm? That would be kind of fun. You know, they're like, oh my god, that thing just got nuked. That place we were just at got nuked. And the reason she nuked it, this could be a secret. She knew that they no longer have a cube. That could be a fun secret. So I think they're going to try to get through 2 shrines today. Shagambi and what's the other one? The one that's sitting out on the plateau. Moa. And I made a Moa shrine as well. Let me show you guys that. I like to show off. Whoops, hang on. Boop. So this is Moa's shrine. Moa is like the snake person. And this one I built this one's just a nice single floor thing. Fake secret rooms and real secret rooms, and the little statues with the arrows on it. I thought that was kind of a fun shrine. And the hard one here is they have to get over to it. They have to somehow get across that big lava pit in order to get to the shrine itself. If you look back at the map it's right here. Right down here is the Shrine of Moa. So they're over here. I think, probably the sacrifice. The sacrifice of the grung would probably be another thing that could occur. And then which shrine is this one? I always forget. Moa's. Step Back History says, I had a question about magic items. I noticed there is a move away from agonizing over balanced encounters and focusing on the story and what makes sense in the world. Yes. But you ask your players for what they want and it pops up. I was wondering why the focus on story and world building in one place and less emphasis on another. Fantastic question. I am glad you asked. Let me bookmark that for a second and just see where I'm at. And I'll tell you what, when we get down to the magic item section, we will talk about that. So also, if they take a rest, I want to have Gabriel's tormented soul in a dream and sees the Sown sisters. I think that'd be fun. I think that's probably enough. I don't need a lot of scenes today. One thing we forgot to do is go over the characters and talk about them. But a bunch of them are out today. So this day, Smoke is not going to be there. Gabriel is not going to be there. Punchy will be there. Warren will be there. Ogechi will be there. Huit Zeline will not be there. And then I have an unknown character that my friend James Grimmel is coming to play. So I can't have the Gabriel Tormented Soul in a Dream because he will not be there. So I don't know what other scenes I'll throw in place. I'm going to have to improvise some stuff. It'd be fun to have something with Warren and the Big Beast. But I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do there. And I always tug on Ogechi's character strings so much. It could be that Punchy has the tormented dream, but Gabriel's soul is actually tormented, so I don't know. I don't know what else Punchy. I don't know what Punchy might see. He's got Zugtamoy stuff. So maybe a Zugtamoy dream. I'm not sure. Oh, so the sacrifice of the Grung, Punchy, can hear them. So he might get a bunch of Vegapygmies on his side. Sorry, I bumped the mic. Because he has the voice of Zugtamoy in his head. So that could be fun. So that's a secret, right? He can speak to the Vegapygmies. What else do we have going on? So now we come to secrets. So let's cut a few of these off here. Fantastic locations. We're just going to use what's in the book. Uh-oh, cancel. Oh, I hit stuff. Other Ishmael's an important NPC. There's also the Grung. What's the name of the Grung? Oh, this is cool. So Ovek speaks Grung. Here we go. Imbok. And then we have the Vegapygmy Chief. Probably has a name like bees humming. We'll call him Zim. Since one of the characters is going to talk to him. So that's one of the NPCs. What monsters might they face? They're going to face those snake things out in front. What are they called? The Jaculis. Let's see. They spring. They're not super powerful. Springing. What else? Other things might they face? I don't know. Oh, well, the stone golem. I don't know what else. All right, let me whip through some secrets here, because that's like the hard part. And as soon as I'm done with the secrets, then let's talk about the Lazy Dungeon Master, and let's get back to Step Back History's question. So what secrets do we need to reveal this time? Valindra nuked the Fane because she knew they no longer have a cube. Thinks the characters are far more worthwhile, are far more likely in a tomb than her own. So she's probably already sent groups down there and it hasn't gone well. Or she just doesn't think her group is particularly powerful and she'd rather have the other folks do it. I got a bunch of Red Wizard stuff. What's her name? What's the name of the... what is she called? Damn it. What is the name of the... I always forget her name. There she is, Fenthaza. Fenthaza got away. Jaculi sounds like an Italian dessert. Hello, Paladin Hulk. Hello, Step Back History. Hello, everybody that has joined. Thank you all for coming. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I need 3 more secrets. Oh, what else is going on in Omu that matters? The horror within the tomb being kept by hags called the Stone Sisters. So there's a bunch of... Oh, God, I keep bumping the mic. Sorry about that. Probably sounds bad. Vilindra did a rocks fall and everyone dies in a town. Yes, so I'm going to have her do that in the town. I'm going to have her hanging around in Omu at this point, and she's going to be sort of the leader of the Red Wizards. And she kind of doesn't care if the characters kill the Red Wizards. I think maybe some hard caliber Red Wizards might say, you know, we demand that you come with us, and then get all surly. And then the characters can fight them or not. And Vilindra doesn't care if they get killed. If the characters kill them, that's proof to her that the characters are really the right ones for the job. So other monsters might be Red Wizard mercenaries. So, okay. That's not bad. I'm pretty good with that. I'm pretty good with where we stand. So let's, let me jump and talk to Step Back History. So there's an interesting, you bring up a very good point, which is if we're doing this whole sort of the what makes sense for the world thing, then why do we focus on magic items? And the reason we focus on magic items and sort of break out of the idea that the story drives what happens is that magic items really matter to the characters and yet are in the hands of the DM to award. So the players have ideas about their characters and they have things that they know about. They know more about their characters than we do. So it's one thing for magic items to just sort of appear. For example, Ras Nisi does have a flaming sword of Ubtao, or he has a flaming sword. I made it one of Ubtao. And it was good that also matched one of the characters. So I kind of knew that Ras Nisi had this blade, but I knew it would end up in the hands of Huitziline. So that does kind of have a story flavor to it. So the reality is that if we know ahead of time what kind of items, and remember, we're not asking for specifics. So I don't say to them like, what do you want? And they say, I want a +2 glaive that does a thing. If they just say, I like pole arms, that's enough. And then we keep that in our mind. And then as the story generates, maybe there's an opportunity for a pole arm to be in there. So it's not that we're completely breaking away from the story. We still focus on what the story in the world, but we also, one of the input variables that are kind of guiding the story is what the characters actually want for their character. What weapons do they want for their character? So the earlier we have that list in mind, the more that it can organically happen. That they get the kinds of things they're interested in. It might, like an enemy might shift what kind of enemy they are, because that enemy will better fit what the characters will want in the end, right? If, it could be that the champion who guards Valindra's Shadowmantle carries a glaive, right? A magical glaive that he had that actually came from a barbed devil or bearded devil that he fought. And so it's got this bearded devil soul trapped in it, right? Now we get to design the story around this thing, but the character is like, I want a glaive. He's like, wow, I got a demonically possessed glaive. This thing's badass, right? But one of the reasons we pay more particular attention to that is because if we just sort of let the story roll on, I know for me as a DM, I will tend to forget about magic items and then maybe roll on them randomly. But then the characters are like, all I need is a goddamn magic bow and I haven't gotten one, right? And I'm like, oh, yeah, you didn't, but that's the way the story goes. So I don't know if that makes sense. The idea is that they don't completely break away from the story, but they are one of the variables that we pop into the mix. If we think about the fact that we're sort of cooking a story up at the table while we're running it, one of the one of the ingredients that we throw in there is what are the kinds of items that characters want or that players want so that we can do it. Hey, my mom is here. Hi, Mom. Thanks for coming to my Twitch channel. I can show her now that she's here. Why don't we look at the book? But step back history, right? Yeah. So step back history. Did that answer? Let me know if that answered your question about magic items, if that makes sense. There's another interesting. Gotta keep hitting the mic. I'm sorry. There is another interesting piece here, though, and this is something that Enrique and I talked about yesterday, which is there are times where, as the story sort of developing and situations sort of occur, where you look at it and you go, "Yeah, the story all led to this point, but now it's actually going to make for a bad." It's going to make for a bad situation. It's going to make for not a fun scene. And an example of that is like if the story leads the characters to face off against an insurmountable foe where they can't beat it. And now what you've done is you've taken their agency away. They don't have anything they can do because they're facing a foe that could just kill them. So now they kind of have to do whatever that person says, right? And that removes some of their agency. So that means that even though the story led to this situation, we're going to have to manipulate that situation in order to get it to a point where it's still fun again. Fun still matters more than staying true to the story, right? If we have to lie a bit, if we have to twist something a bit so that it's fun, that's more important than trying to say like, well, the story drove it to there. We don't want the bonds of the story. We don't want the idea that the story is so sacrosanct that it violates the core rule of D&D, which is the fun of it. And I think the same is true when we're talking about magic items. It's also true if they face an insurmountable foe. If they face an insurmountable foe, what Enrique and I talked about yesterday is that you want to make sure they still have options. Like maybe they've got something that foe needs so that the foe can't just kill them outright. Maybe they have information that the enemy doesn't know that helps them. Maybe they're able to steal something that's valuable. Maybe they have some other doomsday device that's in hand. So like what we talked about yesterday was if the characters are facing off against Valindra out in front of the Tomb of the Nine Gods, and Valindra's a lich and they're level 7, she could kill them easily, right? But she needs them because she doesn't have anybody that can go into the tomb and succeed. And also, by the way, right next to her is that big obelisk, and it's trapped inside that obelisk is a terrible, powerful demon. So if things go really bad, they just have to hit that obelisk, and that will cause all kinds of problems here, including for Valindra. So now they have options, right? They can talk to her and do what she says. They can also negotiate with her. They have something she doesn't, which is capability to go down there. And they have this doomsday weapon off to the side where it's like, if she says she's going to do anything, I'm going to hit that thing. And that's agency, right? When the characters were facing off against Rosnisi and he had a whole room full of guys, they discovered that one of the guys, his most powerful guardian, his bodyguard that was right there, is in love with the Yuan-ti pureblood that's right down below. And if they can get him to go protect her, that means they are free to go after Rosnisi, right? So they were able to manipulate that situation, and it was a little iffy. Like they would threatened her instead, and boy, that set that guy off. But he couldn't let go of the fact that he was in love with her. So when Rosnisi is like, if you want her, go ahead and kill her. We don't care. And the guy's like, if you touch her, I'm going to cut your head off. And that created this split tension between the villains, which ended up giving them the advantage they needed to win the fight. That's the kind of agency we have to put in when, that's the kind of agency I want to put in when I feel like I have put the characters into a scene that they cannot change. That doesn't really get into the magic items thing, but it does. It's kind of the same thing, that we have to manipulate that particular part of the story for the fun of the game. And sometimes it means we want to make sure that the magic items that we're putting in matter. But the earlier we know, and we could just ask them, what kind of items do you want? Oh, I want a bow. I like magic bows. I like, one of the characters. I like to shapeshift into monsters with my beast form, but I like magic items that will still have an effect when I'm shifted. And I had to do a bunch of research to figure out what those are. The earlier I know that, the more I can sort of seed that stuff into the story as it goes. So it doesn't violate the story to have that happen. Step Back History says, my current game's story is very political and urban right now, and I wound up making a pretty boring session as the story moved from one phase to the other. I learned my style lacks action and combat, and so I think I'm lacking in the making a fun session a part of my skill set. Yeah, I mean, that could be a tough one too, especially if you have a style of game that might not resonate as well with the players. Even if the players originally said, oh, that sounds great. I do think, and I used to say this with 4th edition, that like sometimes we want to make, Dr. Zhivago, and our players want Walker Texas Ranger. That we have these deep ideas for like really in-depth stories with lots of intricacy and lots of mysteries and lots of interwoven plots and lots of red herrings and all this stuff. And our players just want to roundhouse kick people in the face every 12 minutes, And I think that, trying to ensure that if we have a story like an urban and political story, well, combat, I think it's safe to say, I'll say it, that I think people prefer exploration and role playing more than combat. But combat is still part of it, and people still like a fight. And so you want to make sure, like, well, as I'm developing the story, are there options for fights? Like, do they go to the seedy side of town? Do they have to go down into the sewers? I watched a really interesting series on Netflix. It didn't get very good reviews, but I liked it a lot, called The Frankenstein Chronicles. And it's about London in like the 1800s, and it's a terrible place. But every so often they like find an old cellar system that hasn't been opened in years, and there's like weird people down there. And, there's like, it was like a D&D game, and it had places where combat was. So, knowing like where they're going to be able to get into a scrape can matter. Yeah. And then Paladin Hulk says he remembers Walker Texas Ranger. And if you remember, like, that show is essentially like if Chuck Norris doesn't roundhouse kick someone in the face in the first 7 minutes, people are tuning out. So, whatever the story is for the adventure, he better roundhouse kick someone in the face in 7 minutes. I don't feel quite as strong about that, these days as I used to back in the 4th edition days, but I still think it matters. So why don't we take a quick look, since we're here, at the finished version, hopefully, I will be checking it out later this afternoon, of Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. So I just got this back from Mark Radel. It's got the cover integrated. This is the PDF version. There's a blank page because the print version needs a blank page. And those of you who have followed this show before have seen a lot of this. Here's the new fully working table of contents. It looks like it's clickable. So if we click Embracing the GM's Truths, we go right to it. Everyone's here to have fun. Players don't care as much as you think. Players want to see their characters do awesome things. You are not the enemy. Players love breaking the game. There's Esmeralda the Lich. Man, that looks good, doesn't it? So here, every chapter of this book, by the way, has like a tips section. So the idea is like, if you just want to go through and read the chapter headings from the table of contents and then skip to the end and read the tips for embracing the GM's truths, you can cover a lot of ground. I think, of course, you should still read it. These are some fun ones. How to make your life a little easier as a DM. Award levels instead of experience. Do checkpoints. Improvise your ability and skill checks. Don't worry too much about having set DCs. Skip initiative and take turns around the table. I do that all the time. Delegate initiative tracking and other tasks to players. Use static monster damage. Assign a rules lawyer. And run low-level games. All those things like make your life a little easier. I skipped down. So, sorry, I'm jumping about. What to show you? Preparing for your games. So you have nice like chapter breaks that use the big, beautiful artwork from previous books, other books. So the steps that you saw us go through are the main 8 steps that are the backbone of the Lazy Dungeon Master's checklist, which is reviewing the characters, creating a strong start, outlining your potential scenes, defining your secrets and clues, developing fantastic locations, outlining important NPCs, choosing relevant monsters, selecting magic items. And that's 8 steps, but you don't actually have to do all 8 steps. You can instead choose, cut steps that you don't need. Yes, step back history. This will soon be on your iPad. I will conservatively say in the next 2 weeks, but hopefully if this one is all right, sooner than that. I do need to send some test. I'll tell you guys what, you dudes that are in the Twitch chat, you fine folks that are in Twitch chat, email me, email me at mike@mikeshea.net and let me know that you would like to be on my test list. And if you're on the test list, then you will get it sooner because I want to send it out to probably a dozen or so people. I want to send the note that I will be sending out to everyone with all of the rewards, and I'd love people to test it out and take a look at everything and make sure everything works and tell me if something's not clear. Because I'm going to be sending out to nearly 7,000 people, and when I send it out to 7,000 people, a lot of many of them are non-English or not native English speakers. Many of them are not totally computer literate, so I need to have I need people to test it out and let me know that everything's going to work well. So since you are wonderful people that hang out here in Twitch chat and actually stayed almost to the end, and you are a backer, I will be checking your account to make sure you actually backed it. On the assumption that you actually backed it and you're in this chat channel, send me an email, please, and I will add you to my test list. And probably in the next few days, you will get that test list back. Maybe even by the end of the weekend. I'll probably do this tomorrow. I think I have all day tomorrow without anything, so I think I'll do that tomorrow. So even if there's like bugs in this, like a link or something that's not fixed, I'll still be sending that out with the current version, and then we'll just update it when the new version comes out. So please, that will be a great help to me and a great help to the backers who will. I'm sorry, Gondolar, that you weren't able to back it. It will be out soon. It will probably be out on RPG Now and on my website, very close to the full release. Within a couple of days. So. So I wouldn't worry about it. Tilda DeWilda says that you love the art. Yes, I love the art too. We have 19 pieces of original artwork in this that were all done by Pedro Patier. And he really did an incredible job. I'm really happy with it. I mean, I'll be honest, Lazy Dungeon Master has been a great book, and I wrote it, and I had no idea if people would care, and they did, and I've sold many, many copies of it. I'm very, very happy. But boy, this book, I am really happy with the way this came out. And I poured, I think wasn't Van Gogh. I don't know. There's an artist the big joke is, this famous artist was in a park, and this woman came up and says, "Oh my God, you're that famous artist. Could you draw a picture of me?" And he says, "Sure." And he grabs a piece of paper, and he looks at her and looks at the paper and looks at her and looks at the paper, and he draws one slash down the middle of the paper and hands it to her. And she says, that, and he goes, that'll be $400. And she says, $400? Like, you just drew a line in the middle of the paper. It took you 4 seconds. And he said, that didn't take me 4 seconds. That took me my whole life to make. And I feel like that with this book. Like, I've been playing D&D since I was 13 years old. And I feel like everything from then until now, I poured into this book. So I'm not saying it's the best thing that's ever been made, but it's the best thing that's ever been made by me and the fine folks who worked with it. So, I can't wait to get into people's hands, and I'm very happy with where it came out. I really hope that it lasts the ages. I'm always worried that 5 years from now it'll all be wrong, but I don't think so. This is a refinement of the Lazy DM, which is 5 years ago, so I think it'll last a good long time. I love that piece of art. That's the secret and clue, right? She picked up an axe and learns all kinds of stuff about dwarves. I think that's awesome. All kinds of great stuff in here. So I've been focusing on the steps, right? The 8 steps, but that's not even a third of the book. If we cut back the steps, yay, my mom is happy. My mom will get a copy of it too. She can read it on her iPad. So those are the steps, but then we talk about, what's the preparation notes. We have examples all through it too. There's actually an adventure in here that's the equivalent of one of the adventures from Fantastic Adventures. Navy DM, the Lazy DM Reborn Again, Part 2, the Redux. Yeah. I have a good friend of mine that I have lunch with who is another fellow who he's kind of a hero of mine. He's a full-time, works full-time in the RPG industry and making things. He is he's the owner of Inkwell Ideas, who makes a cartographer. He makes a whole bunch of creature card decks, and here it is, Inkwell Ideas. He makes the dungeon dice, and Worldographer, Dungeonographer, and Cityographer are his things. Anyway, it turns out he lives in the area, and he got in touch with me, and we started having lunch every few weeks. And he and I got together, and I was talking to him about another project I want to do, and it was a sequel to a project I've done in the past, and he said, and I said, like, it's going to be blah, blah, blah 2. And he goes, don't ever do that. I'm like, what? He goes, don't ever call something the second of something, because then people have no idea which one to buy, or whether they can buy the second one without buying the first, and blah, 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 blah. And I'll go, it's a really good idea. Okay, I'm not going to call it that. And I told him, like, it's a little too late with Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. He goes, good. You didn't call it the Lazy Dungeon Master 2. And I was like, that's a good point. So if I do another book like this, and man, I can't even imagine doing another book like this, it will have, the Lazy Dungeon Master Strikes Again, or something like that. I don't know. We had a lot of different names for this. My wife and I, for many walks, just spitballed names of this. So I thought, so I got a couple minutes. Other high level, so there's a whole section about other things you can do to make your game great. That's all in here. What music? I have a bunch of suggested soundtracks that I've had and that other people. This actually comes from recommendations from a bunch of different people. One thing I really tried with this book is it's not just a bunch of Mike Shea nonsense. This book, I researched the hell out of this book. I took a month off from work and I read every guide I could get my hands on that taught DMs how to do anything, written by many, many authors. The folks at Gnome Stew, my friends over at Kobold Press, all many guides and I did like the informal version of a meta analysis on DM advice, and a lot of the stuff that's in here is well refined, but it comes from that sort of stuff. It's very it's very solid. Step Back History says never unprepared. I read it. It's good. I liked it. I can't remember. So I'll tell you, there are a few advice books where they're more like a whole series. I think Never Unprepared wasn't like this. Is that the one that Phil Vecchione did? I read so many of them that they're all sort of mixing in my head. But I did read this one and I did like them. I think they're all worthwhile. Like anything that helps us, learn about, learn how to be good DMs, I think is not. Yeah, I did recall that it was heavy. It was heavy on the prep. But I actually quoted a few times in here. So there's, we can learn from everything. And again, like, I don't expect that people are going to grab onto this book and they're going to do the 8 steps and that's all they're going to do. And they're not going to, like, that's not the design of the book. The book is designed to, so that you can build your own style. It offers ideas and it offers a refined system, but you don't have to follow that system at all. Let me whip through. So the toolkit, what are the physical things that we can have at our game? You've heard a lot about this stuff. I did take a step back. So there isn't like a thing that says like you should play just Theater of the Mind. You'll see a lot of stuff that says like here's how to use miniatures, maps, and terrain. Reskinning, I love reskinning. How to reskin monsters, worlds, dungeons. That's a wonderful lazy technique. Here's my reskinning. How to reskin a Dracolich into a Lich or vice versa. Building a lazy campaign. So this one's a little stylized that like some people really love to build giant campaigns. And this one says, how about you start in the center and spiral out? I know Enrique sort of had, one of my favorite quotes from Enrique is like, no one gives a shit about your 12 deities and they don't care about your empires and they don't care, man. They want to get into fights with rats down in the basement. Like, don't overcomplicate things. And I was like, yeah. And then it got a lot of, I talked a lot about that on Twitter and got crap back both ways. So this one definitely takes this idea of start at the center with the characters and then draw like a spiral outwards. And you're just sort of always going just beyond the horizon that the characters can see. So it's a different approach, but if you want to write your own giant campaign world, go with God. Just don't pretend that everyone is going to love your huge world, right? Like don't presume they will. You might, and it's possible they might, but don't do it for them. Do it for you. And instead for them, focus on their characters because that's what they love. Struggling author syndrome is what one of my professors called it. That's a good. Citizen Shamu, I missed the Kickstarter in this Mama Jama. What's the projected release date? End of the month, end of September. I will say that. I was going to say fall, but I think safely end of September. You'll be able to pick this up. Probably sooner than that, but we'll go conservatively as in September. For the PDF, print on demand will be a little longer because we have to do a bunch of proofing on that and make sure it's cool. But the PDF will be out before then. So here's a whole chapter on how to build a lazy campaign. That was a big one. Running a session 0. If you guys look at that session 0, building a world, isn't that great? God, I love this art. Running a session 0, and then we have a whole big third of the game, a whole third of the book on just how do you run your game. What are the top traits of good dungeon masters? Relaxing, listening, trusting your tools, sharpening your skills, summarizing the previous session. This is a good one for, Matt Colville talked about this, right? And, what did we do last time? I look forward to giving you some of my dollars at the end of September then. Good. I'm happy to accept your dollars. And more importantly, I'm happy to give you the book, and I hope you will enjoy it. I know I'm very pleased. And the workbook. I haven't talked about the workbook yet. The workbook is also underway, and we're making good progress there. Eric Nowak, who did the layout for Fantastic Adventures and Fantastic Locations, is doing the layout for that. And that is going to be an awesome book for 5th edition DMs. I'm really can't wait to have it myself, and I like where it is coming up. 3 tricks for group storytelling. Describe your killing blow. Interesting physical characteristics of monsters. Interesting characteristics of a tavern. What happens along the journey. Ways to get your characters out of their character sheets, out of the mechanics, and thinking about the world that's around them. Big focus. Look at that one. God, I love this art. It's so awesome. Improvising NPCs. How do you make NPCs up while you're running your game? Choose a name. Put yourself in their mind. Improvising scenes and situations. How do things come up? Kind of getting away from the idea that encounters occur based on the type of encounter, and instead they just sort of work. Combat styles, right? Using multiple. How to use theater of the mind, how to use tactical gridded combat, and how to use a hybrid approach, and using the right tool for the right job. Maintaining the pace. This is very much into, I think this is where we talk about, upward and downward beats from Robin Laws. Beats of action and relaxation, and improvising the beats, and how do you improvise it. Here's like 10 examples of how to do upward beats and 10 examples of downward beats. Hey, you find a magic pool that heals all your hit points. And then priming. So this is the whole section on thinking about your game. This is where, what do we do in between? Priming the GM's brain. What books do we read? Movies to watch? Just recommendations. Everybody's got their own, but I thought I'd throw some in here that I like. Movies, books, games, TV shows, comic books, all sorts of stuff, all different, wide variety of books from many different topics and subjects. Walking. Walking is good for you, and it's also a great time to think about your game. Take your headphones out, stop listening and listening to stuff, take a walk, think about your game, and go through the steps of the Lazy Dungeon Master while you're taking a walk. GM brain exercises. These are the things you can do in your walk. What can you do when you're on your own in a boring ass meeting and still want to prep your D&D game? Run through the checklist. What are the villains doing right now? What fronts are on the move? And then the embracing the GM's truths. We talked about this a little bit. Everyone here's have fun. We talked about this earlier. Tricks. How to make your game a little bit easier on you. Final thoughts. Develop your own style, right? This is not one way to do it. This is to help you think about how to make your own style. Write it down, write it out a checklist. Here's an interesting one. I finished writing this one a year ago. The first version of this book was done a year ago. Then we have the results of the 2016 DM survey is all in here, which a lot of the stuff from this book came from. And then a bunch of different results from surveys that took place on Facebook and Twitter that kind of get an idea of where the general preferences. And then I have a reference list. I don't know how many are here. It's a lot of references. And this, if you want like a reading list of things, books, videos, articles to read about how to improve your game, this is a great way to do it. And all of these should be hyperlinked. Let's see. Weird discoveries. Hey, look, it goes to it. Sweet. That's always nice. So that, my friends, is Return to the... Oh, and then we got ads. This is something that... Mark Radell's like, hey, do you want to put some ads in the back? I'm like, sure. So we put in, the whole thing is clickable. Look at that. Oh, so you can give me more money. Sorry. Greed. Fantastic Adventures, Fantastic Locations are in here as well. Little ads for them. And then the back cover, prepare what benefits your game. I'm so happy. I'm just happy to see this. I'm sorry. I'm gushing about my own book. My friends, I need to go get ready for my game. So thank you all for coming. For those of you in Twitch chat, again, if you are a backer, please send me an email. If you happen to be on YouTube and you hear this, send me an email if it's not already out. Hopefully by the time, it won't be too long till it's out. But if you want to get on the test list and you want to help me beta test the release email that I will be sending out to the rest of the backers, and you have backed it yourself, you can get an early copy of the PDF here. And also, so this is the PDF, which I've been focusing on. We are also complete with the ebook version. So if you'd rather have one on your phone that is formatted well for your phone, it includes an EPUB one. So the main version for the backers at $8, which is a hell of a deal for you guys, is EPUB and PDF. So you can view it on a screen or you can view it on a portable device. Step Back History says, what's the state of the workbook? So all the text is done. All the art is done. The design is underway. I got the first draft back of the design and it looked really good. Eric Nowak is doing it. It requires more formatting than this does. So I would say it's a good month off, maybe more, maybe a month to 2 months before we're fully done with that. One of the things is like the formatting of that is so specific that the word count really matters. So I had to go in and like I have a 2-page spread for Theater of the Mind rules, for example, and I had more room. So I was like, okay, well, what else didn't I say about Theater of the Mind that I wanted to put in here that I didn't? So some of it we're adding text, some of it we're taking away. It's tricky with like the lazy layers because I want the lazy layer key to fit on a single page or at most 2 pages. And in some cases it's like 1 page plus 2 lines. So I have to like cut things out, but it's already really brief. So it's really tricky to get it all to fit just right on the page. This one was easier. It didn't matter as much if this didn't fit on the page because we could put art in and stuff to offset it. But that one, it's so page specific. Do you need any info for checking if we're in the Kickstarter? If you want, ideally send your email address that you use to back the Kickstarter. If you are using a different email address, then send me the email address that you backed the Kickstarter with, and I can just verify it that way. Anyway, I've got to run. Thank you all for a great show. Thank you all for the chat. And for those of you watching on YouTube, thank you for watching the show, and I hope you got something out of it. And I will talk to all of you guys later. Have a great week.